Hello and good evening, GPG family. Welcome to the Green Pass Gaming Sunday podcast. Apologies, it's been a while. The GPG Crew's lives and priorities have currently been a bit hectic and changing, and unfortunately, we couldn't bring you the show last week, so apologies again for that. But we are live, away, cracking, ready to get into this, and we're looking forward to the show tonight. And we've got some good topics for you. So, I'll dive into the topics we're going to talk about. I shall introduce the panel as always, and then we will crack on with the show. So, to start off with, we're going to talk topic one about the Nvidia leaks. So, there have been some leaks from Nvidia during this week about a number of unannounced, unreleased titles, specifically regarding GeForce Now streaming service. But there are a number of interesting things as part of this list, which could definitely may or may not exist, and may be good contenders of things to talk about for what we could expect in the future, and if there's any surprises there. Topic two, more game delays, unfortunately. So, with games such as Dying Light 2 and Battlefield 2042 having been delayed, we're going to discuss whether or not this is going to be an ongoing trend, and if we can expect this to slow down or stop, or is this going to continue? And finally, topic three of this evening is going to be about more Xbox acquisition rumors. So I know this is a topic which keeps going around the bush. There's not much new information, but it is a constant recurring rumor which seems to appear every couple of months. And every time it does, it always leaves room for speculation as to whether or not the more it comes up, is it true? Is it not? What can we expect? And what do we think about it? So that will be the main things for tonight. If we have any more time, we may talk about a few little extra bits of information, but we've got quite a lot of content to cover, so we'll just see how the show goes. But before we do begin that, I'll start by introducing your favourite panel as always. So I'll start from top to bottom. Flap, good evening. How have you been, and what have you been up to recently?
Good evening, Pucks. Yeah, not too bad, thank you. I'm all good. It's been absolutely busy at work and smashed over the last couple of weeks. But we're not at full strength tonight. Unfortunately, we don't have Luke with us, as you can probably tell. So we're three-handed tonight. But hopefully, Luke's tuning in, or we'll listen at some point. But yeah, no, I'm all good, thank you. Been playing what have I been playing? You know what? Thanks to Baldman Gamer, and I really am grateful. I've been playing the Call of Duty Vanguard beta last weekend and this weekend for a bit. Kind of liking that. It's kind of exactly what you expect. It's a little bit like FIFA, isn't it? Year on year, it's kind of what you expect and just more of the same. But I kind of like that, so that's been really cool. So it's been a real busy week. Haven't had much chance to play too many games, but Game Pass has got some stellar lineups coming as well for the first half of September, and it's great to see what's coming on Game Pass a little bit further down the line as well. But yes, interested to get into some of these topics, particularly around the rumor of Xbox acquisitions yet again. We've been here so many times, and perhaps we won't dwell on it too much. But it'd be interesting to see what the chat have to say about it. But looking forward to tonight's show, my friend.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for reminding me, actually. I know both of us have personally thanked Ballman Gamer for this, but I would just like to say another live thanks to BMG for giving Flap and I early access beta codes for PlayStation. We've both been enjoying Call of Duty Vanguard last weekend. I've jumped onto the Xbox version this weekend. That's been really good fun, actually. It's been quite an interesting transition to see the difference in quality between a base PS4 and a Series X. That's been a really interesting play. I've just seen a quick comment as well, but where is Luke? Luke is currently holidaying in sunny UK from his island of Jersey. So we do not have him tonight. So hopefully he should be back next week. So it is just the three of us. But last but definitely not least, Scott SX2 on the panel. Good evening, Scott. How have you been, and what have you been up to?
Evening, Pucks. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much, mate. Obviously, great to be back. It's always a bit strange when you've got a week off, but it's good to be able to see you guys again. Good to see chat. Obviously, you mentioned we don't have Luke this week. I hope Luke's enjoying his little trip across the water to the UK, and I'm sure he'll be listening in at some point. This week I've actually been busy myself, as I mentioned in the green room, but I have managed to get Psychonauts 2 finished. You've got Awful Escape on the screen here. This is Flap's footage, but I did manage to complete that. And I've actually made a start on Jedi Fallen Order, so a little bit of variety this week.
Sounds really good. No, I'm glad
Yeah.
Actually,
we're
just
having a good
just
week.
before chat, let us know if you've played The Artful Escape, and let us know what you think of it, because it's a bit of a nuts game. It's pretty crazy, and just be interested to know if anyone else. Have you had a go on it, Pucks?
No, I haven't yet. To be honest, as I just said a minute ago, I've been all of my time, as much as I have had for gaming this week, has all been into the Vanguard beta. So I've not played anything else yet.
No, fair enough.
Have you
Scott,
guys?
Go on.
I was going to say on the Vanguard beta, I've seen some pretty wild footage of that game not running particularly well on Xbox. Have you guys seen any of those?
Absolutely,
Sort of
I have. Yeah, really weird stuff. So obviously last
On
weekend
Xbox?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, on Xbox Series. I wish I'd recorded it now. So I've been playing. I played obviously last week on PS5. That's all it was available on. But this week I was playing it on Xbox Series X, and there is a map called Red Square. You sort of it's in Russia. You're out in the snow, and there was some really weird big black boxes appearing where there should be sort of transparencies and stuff. And the snow was like 10 times bigger than it should be, and it was all multicoloured. It was really bizarre. It was a really hard game to play when that was all going on. So I had to revert back to the PS5, which I have to say ran flawlessly. So they've got a little bit more work to do on the Xbox. Yeah,
That's interesting. I've not seen any issues myself yet. I know on PS4, because I know when I played it last weekend, it was. I mean, apart from the internal game resolution being a bit lowered to accommodate, I had no issues there. But then I think on the re-release of the beta this weekend for the open beta, I know there were some patch notes about they disabled a number of features. And I don't know whether that's messed with things, because when I was playing on PS4, like all of the lighting and bloom effects were just super intense. Like I couldn't, like the whole screen would go black and white and trickle different colours. Really weird. But no, I haven't had any issues yet on Series X, so I find it interesting to say you have.
I wish I'd recorded it now.
It is a beta. It is a bit, so I guess it's kind of to be expected. But they are like pretty wild pucks. So I'd have a quick look. If you won't find it too difficult to find some of the videos going around. It's proper.
Is it
stuff that you don't see very often?
Is it what I described? Is it like big black shapes in the way and stuff?
Yeah, like guns just being replaced by black boxes, and like the screens and the textures of the maps just constantly flickering and flashing. It's stuff that like I say, you don't tend to see very, very often. So
I was so frustrated because I was sniping from the back of the map, and I got a bead on this guy that was running around that had already picked me off a couple of times. He was having a bit of a sniper fest, and just as I'd got a bead on him, about to get a headshot, this big black box came up in front and obscured my view, and he nailed me. And it's like, oh man, so I had to go back to the PlayStation after that. That really annoyed me. But
I can imagine. I hear it's even got a bit of a cheating issue already in the beta as well, is what I was reading. I might be specific to PC, but which I found interesting because I think they have tried to big up their anti-cheat software for Vanguard, if I remember correctly. And
they've got a brand new anti-cheat system coming for Vanguard that they're also incorporating into Warzone, and there's been a big deal around it because obviously Warzone at points has been absolutely unplayable. Not that I even play Warzone, I don't even like it, but I know cheating on that has been horrendous. And there's been a big push this year for Vanguard multiplayer and obviously Warzone to share the same anti-cheat code. So that's interesting to hear that. I've not heard that.
Yeah, not a good start for it. I have just noticed that we do have a Mr. Luke Steele in the chat. So welcome.
Yes, I've seen Luke as well.
Thanks for joining me.
Good evening, Luke. Hope you're doing very well and enjoying your trip in sunny UK. But
it's night time, so it's not overly sunny.
No, not really.
Well,
it's pitch black
dark,
now, isn't it?
Dark UK, yeah.
Our nights are drawing in there, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. Right, I think we're all ready to jump into topic one, are we, gents? So
let's go for it.
Unless you have anything else to add, let's do it. So Nvidia leaks early this week. So there was a list of titles which was inadvertently leaked from Nvidia, but seeing as this is an Nvidia list, it does kind of make sense that these are titles possibly coming to Nvidia's GeForce Now cloud service. Nvidia themselves have said that the list was unauthorized and was just a speculative list meant for internal tracing of upcoming titles. However, though, I mean, the interesting part of this is that not only does it mention previously rumored titles, but it also mentions completely unannounced titles or titles that we as a gaming community may have been expected to see eventually, such as Gears 6, but maybe not seen quite as soon as we have done. So, I mean, questions. I'm going to start with you, Flab, that's all right. My first question for you. So, even though this is a speculative list, which actually I do have a copy of. So let me quickly share that to the screen. This is just my own kind of rough notepad version of most of the titles which were leaked. So as this is a speculative list, are there any standout titles here that you believe could be real? And do you think, is there any titles here that have made you excited for what we could possibly be seeing in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, I think Nvidia have actually confirmed the leak was genuine, haven't they? I don't know if they've gone as far as to confirm that every title on there was kind of genuine and stuff. But there were some titles on there that really kind of... Gears 6 was probably the one that stood out the most, because it's the first one I came to looking down the list. It's like, I don't think anyone is massively surprised about seeing Gears 6 on the list, to be honest, but the fact that it hasn't even been announced yet, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott and Pucks, were Coalition working on something else as well, other than Gears 6?
Yeah.
That was just rumour, wasn't it? Was it actually ever confirmed?
I don't. Sometimes it's hard to separate the fact from the fiction. So essentially, the rumor is that they're working on a smaller title, which is essentially to basically let them get their hands dirty with Unreal 5. I believe that is what they're doing. So it's going to be a smaller project that they'll work on to try and get used to the new Unreal Engine, and then they'll use that experience going into Gear 6. But they've not. I don't believe the Coalition have confirmed either way at this point. So it could be that that's just sort of like an internal testing demo or something that they're doing, and then they've got Gear 6 in pre-production. They've not actually said just yet.
Yeah, so to see Gear 6 on the list, like you say, was interesting. One of the other ones, Titanfall 3, that was interesting to see on there as well, because I know lots of people have been sort of asking for that, to see that on the list as well. We've actually got Fun Speculation in the chat. He said, what did he say? They confirmed it's a genuine leak, but the games are speculative according to them. So, obviously take all of that with a pinch of salt. What else was a Crysis 4? That was kind of a surprise. Half-Life 2 Remastered, which kind of makes sense, actually. I think that's probably genuine. There's obviously a trend for a lot of older games to be remade, and Half-Life 2 absolutely seems to fit the bill for that, particularly with some of the newer or now generation hardware that we have. I think there's probably an element of people out there that probably never played Half-Life 2. So... yeah, what about yourself, Pucks? Was there anything on there? The Bioshocks were interesting, the RTX remaster and the 2022. I'm not really sure what to make of those, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, forgive the misspelling there, but yeah, that is Bioshock RTX, not TRX, that's meant to be. But these are interesting ones, because, we got a Bioshock collection not long ago, so I'm wondering if this is maybe just, is that just an update to the current collection to add RTX support, perhaps? Or is this another new... title, but is that just the original being released with RTX support? Who's to say? I think the one that surprised me the most, believe it or not, I know it's been talked about on some of our previous games that we've done, but Kingdom Hearts 4 is on here, which I found very surprising to see.
Oh, where's Luke when you need him, Scott?
Yeah, I know.
He'd be tearing into you right about now.
I mean, I know the game doesn't exist anymore, but it is on the list, so I'm going to talk about it. Only because, these games take they've taken Square Enix years to develop from 2 till 3. But then between 2 and 3, there were, countless spin-off games which all ended up going into the story and stuff. But, whether or not I no doubt they're probably using the same engine, if this is true, Unreal Engine, as they did with Kingdom Hearts 3. So, but to see that on the list kind of gets me a little bit excited, actually, as to, are we going to... Well, is it in the works at all? It's something that I hadn't really considered, because... I imagine that if you have played the game, you've gotten to the end of it, the kind of hidden ending or the final ending kind of does seem to allude that there is more to come. The story will continue, even though the game was technically meant to finish off the whole arc of what Kingdom Hearts started out to be. But I find that one very interesting. Stalker Android as well, almost like an Android port of the Stalker game. I was sitting there thinking, have I seen this before? Because I know there's a number of companies that have announced that they're doing Android versions of games. I think we've got a Just Cause Android game in the work currently, so to see another game like Stalker potentially going to an Android platform, I found really interesting. Also, Time Splitters 2 remastered. I think this was something that did the rumours a while back about how there was the game.
Was that PlayStation 1 or was that PlayStation 2, Time Splitters 2?
PS2.
Yeah,
PlayStation
GameCube
2,
as well, wasn't it? And then
Yes,
actually,
yeah.
it came with the original Xbox as well.
I think it was on all
Did it?
three of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Wow.
think it was across all three of those.
Oh,
I
okay.
love Time Splitters. Loved it.
But and I think another one we'd seen rumours for the GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. But again, being the whole speculative list, it's one of those things we've already heard the rumours of it. So have Nvidia just kind of come in and just written those down. I mean, so one of the things I've written on my notes here as well is that, you know, it's safe to say that Nvidia or any other company with any kind of leaks like this are never going to admit that these are real, as in that they know these titles exist and, oh, sorry, this was done by accident. You know, so I'm going to ask you this question, Scott, actually, if you don't mind. So,
Yeah.
And by all means, please tell me what anything here that you are interested in or something that took you by surprise, if at all. You know, how likely do you believe that any of these listings are genuine? Do you reckon there is any insider knowledge here and that some of these could actually be factual? Or do you reckon it is just maybe internal rumor mills and Nvidia are actually none the wiser than the rest of us?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, if you take the company line, it is just speculation on their behalf, and it's difficult because I think if you look at it, at least the list that you've got up here, I mean, a lot of those you could say, yeah, but that makes sense. I mean, look, you ask anybody, is Gear 6 in development? You will say, yeah, of course it is. We don't know when it's coming,
definitely.
but, you know, there's someone there that just seemed pretty obvious. But then there are other ones on there with that, you know, for example, Bayonetta 3. No, that's not coming to GeForce now.
Well, there was. I did hear on YouTube, and perhaps anyone in chat, let me know if you've heard the same. But I think that some of the GeForce experience was being used. GeForce Now was being used by game developers that are working remotely in order to share the latest builds of the game, so other people could actually use the game. Yeah, so these aren't necessarily games that are coming to GeForce Now. They are games that are using the GeForce Now service in order to sort of span working from home for the devs and stuff. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I was listening to the Xbox 2 podcast with Randall Thorne and Jez Corden just earlier today, actually, that they're showing Friday, and they discussed this a little bit, actually. And I think Ballman Gamers mentioned that Jez shed a little bit of light on it as well, because I know we've got the list here that you've got up on screen, Pucks, but I believe it did actually go beyond this. I think the list was bloody massive.
Thousands.
Thousands.
This was just a
big
selection.
snapshot of popular ones, from one article I found. So...
And
there's definitely lots missing.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the full list is probably not what you've got on screen here, but it's probably the code names. There were a lot of titles that were Project this, Project that. I can't remember the exact names.
Typhoon, Project Typhoon, and Cobalt was another one.
Yeah, Holland, which allegedly is Fable, which is the interesting thing because... Jez Corden, who I believe is, you know, fairly reputable, particularly in the Xbox space, basically confirmed that, look, yes, these projects exist. One of them being, like, say, I believe Project Forza Horizon 5's project name was on there. And then, Project Holland, which I believe was meant to be Fable by Playground. And then there was, I can't remember the project names off the top of my head, but one of them was In Exile's next game, which is like a first-person RPG as well, which basically he was able to verify with his own sources that he had previously heard these code names, and then they all of a sudden appear on this list. So it kind of seems that this list is like a bit of everything. It's probably a bit real, a bit unannounced, and a little bit just speculation, because it's interesting how the list actually leaks. So if you remember when, at least this is how I read it was released anyways, when GeForce Now first came out, the original client basically allowed you to access anything. If you remember when it first launched, because there was a bit of an uproar when developers were like, hold on, you can't just let everybody play our game on your servers without, you know, us being involved. And then they had to kind of make only certain games available via GeForce Now. So I think someone managed to get the first version of GeForce Now working, and they hacked that or something along those lines. I forget the details exactly, and that's how this list came about. But Flap, I think on that point that you mentioned, it kind of makes sense. You know, if these are unannounced games that are maybe in testing, they're having to use streaming services to get it in the hands of testers and things like that, particularly with the pandemic still raging on, especially in the States. Maybe they're using GeForce Now to do. But on the Xbox front, you would think maybe they would have maybe an internal version of xCloud that they could use rather than GeForce.
That's a good point.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, why are they using GeForce now when, like you say, Microsoft obviously have their own internal game streaming service. So that kind of made me think perhaps it isn't something, perhaps it's not used by devs. But I don't know, perhaps the red tape and the bureaucracy of getting stuff into the xCloud gaming side of things might be a bit, I don't know, perhaps GeForce Now is just easier to use. I don't know.
Well, you say that. I suppose probably the important thing to remember there is that this isn't all just Xbox, is it? So I imagine GeForce testing on a PC platform will probably make it easiest in terms of multi-plats, wouldn't it? Rather than just having, you can't test your PlayStation games on xCloud.
That's fair. And I mean, and they have used, I think they've used software like Parsec quite a lot. You will have heard about over the past 18 months. So, I guess if you were to ask me, Pox, I think what this is, I think at some point somebody's created a database with a lot of just speculative titles for maybe testing purposes, and somehow that's got mixed up with potentially a list of unannounced games from maybe another source, because it does appear like there's stuff in there that is genuine, but like I say, there is a lot of stuff in there that just doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense from my perspective. Like I say, something like Bayonetta 3 kind of just, I don't see that ever come to GeForce Now. I mean, Christ, we'll be lucky if it comes out on the Switch at this rate.
Good point.
It's been that long. And in terms of things that stand out, nothing really stands out, because like I say, particularly the system that we've got in front of us here, like everything kind of makes sense, doesn't it? These are games that either are already out and it's kind of like a remaster, or games you would expect to see like Gears 6.
I did have another question lined up as well, which you're kind of already answering this, but my question to both of you was going to be, to try and look at this from the opposite angle and just kind of look at it and think, are there any listings here which maybe seem a bit too bizarre to the point it could well lead you to believe that actually a lot of this is not real and it's just potentially, maybe it is just a pure speculative list of data from an analyst or something. But there's got a few comments, right?
There's a few comments in the chat around that. Titanfall 3 will never happen. They're all in on Apex and Star Wars Fallen Jedi 2. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point.
Yeah. There's been a lot of chat as well, actually, around the Coalition. Stubbs obviously being in the chat, and Maverick in a healthy conversation. Stubbs has put, the Coalition are working on 2 projects. I knew I hadn't dreamt that, and confirmed by the Coalition itself, but it doesn't mean to say it's another IP. Stubbs was saying he thinks the Coalition studios have the potential to go above and beyond Gears of War and Halo quality. I absolutely agree. I mean, the Halo is one of the best looking games, I think, on the Series X. Gears 5. I think they've done fantastic.
Particularly the DLC.
Yeah, they've got the DLC quality is fantastic.
Was that Hivebusters? They've got the chops, haven't they, to do that. They could create a true masterpiece on God of War level, as Xbox doesn't have that standout. And people were saying that people were saying that Ragnarok in the PlayStation showcase didn't look that good. I thought it looked bloody fantastic. I don't know.
I think what it was. Seem to be expecting like something above and beyond what God of War 2018 was. But
but that's the thing,
though. They reuse a lot of assets, right?
But I don't think people are taking into account how fantastic God of War looked on the PS4. That was a phenomenal achievement. So. I don't know. I'm not sure of the leap people were expecting forward going on the 5 with Ragnarok. But it'd be interesting to see if Coalition can really exercise their chops in that department and make an absolutely sort of stunning game. That would be great to see.
Yeah, I mean, not to sidestep too much, but I mean, what you were saying there, I think it's one of those what do you call it? One of those things that happen. I mean, I think a lot of people seem to forget that the current gen, it's still brand new, right? And the power is still kind of being figured out by these devs, right? Like, what can they squeeze out of these machines and stuff? I mean, I know that there is more of the argument now that yes, they're more akin to PC. So what is the difference? But when you know that as a developer, when you know you've only got one set of requirements to work towards, rather than having to account for every other piece, every PC combination you could think of, you can. When you know what you're working with, you can definitely squeeze as much. Well, once you know and have the experience, there's nothing stopping you from trying to squeeze as much out of you can from a system. But it's still very early days for that. We're not even a year in yet. And I think a lot of people are maybe just spoiled by, I suppose, what we hear and see, or maybe too into the news to maybe consider the fact that this is a new gen. It is going to take a while, but trust us, it is going to come. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you can see that in PlayStation outsourcing some of the PC remasters to an external studio to do that. Like you say, get their core game studios focusing solely on their own hardware, PS4, hopefully PS5 only going forwards, and then if it does go to PC further down the line, then outsource that to a studio that can make that change a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that kind of it's starting to wrap up this topic. I'm not quite sure how much more we can talk about this. It's kind of the difficult thing with these kind of things, and that because it's speculation and rumor, it's very difficult to try and articulate more questions around it than I think we already have. I know you've read out some Stubbs comments already, but is there any other interesting comments you've seen at all regarding this, or chat even yourselves before I move on? Have you got any questions for us regarding this topic, and do you have any thoughts? Scott, do you have any more thoughts on this at all?
Yeah, I guess one thing, just a couple of comments from BMG as well. Thank you very much for BMG. He mentioned just a couple of the project or code names. So Cobalt, which we mentioned, which I believe that's Horizon 5's
No, Cobalt is the In Exile FPS.
Oh, sorry, and then Indus is the Civ type game, allegedly like a
that's it. Strategy.
Like a 4X style game, which I can't remember the name of the developer now, but Jez Corden did mention that as well, which is interesting, really, isn't it? To like I say, just to see these project code names, which is why I think there might be a little bit more to this than maybe we originally see. But I think you're right, Pox. It is difficult just to see what is real in this and what's not. I think if we see something like Stalker come to Android, I mean, I can't see it personally, but we're going to see Gears 6, we're going to see Indiana Jones. Final Fantasy 16 is coming to PC, no doubt, at some point. So
just while we're there, sorry.
No, I was just going to say about kind of just adding on to what Scott was saying. I know this isn't the best snippet that I've picked up, but looking at what I do have in front of us, so we've got a lot of remasters coming along. Assuming this is real, there's a lot of remasters. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 HD Time Splitters 2 remastered. Obviously, we've already talked about the GTAs potentially coming back. There's the Mirror's Edge RTX remaster, a BioShock RTX remaster, a Batman Arkham Knight, Halo Half-Life 2. Sorry, again, this is just the snippet, right? And there's a lot of titles here which we can again assume are definitely going to come, like Tekken 8, Human Fall Flat 2. Yes, maybe that's a thing. Street Fighter 6, definitely. Resident Evil 4 remake also found an interesting one because that was doing the rumor mill, but again, that was a rumor from a couple of months ago, and it all kind of stopped.
That's coming. So, that's definitely coming.
It has to be right, given the success of 2 and 3. You can't stop at 3.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Sorry,
Flack, he's going to... Yeah.
Well, no, there's a couple other... just looking at some of these titles on it, there's a couple of other things that have been in the news this week. And let's talk about the exclusivity of Indiana Jones. Was that a surprise to anyone? Are we actually still having this conversation? Or, I know the argument goes along the lines of, perhaps the Bethesda deal was signed after the Indiana Jones title was kind of in production and decided, which platforms it was going to be on. But, people were saying, well, it's a Disney title, it's likely to be cross-platform. But actually, I don't think Disney are overly fussy about exclusives. I mean, you've only got to look at Spider-Man and obviously now Wolverine. So I don't think Disney are particularly fussed about having exclusives on a particular platform. So I think Indiana Jones solely coming to Xbox absolutely makes sense, and to be honest, came as no surprise whatsoever to me. I don't know what the chat and the rest of the panel think about that.
Yeah, so I think this actually came up again sort of separately because I think Special Nick of Xbox Era fame commented that he believed it was exclusive, and some people have speculated that might be in reaction to the announcement of Wolverine. I think maybe some people are maybe thinking that Xbox aren't best pleased that some of these, I guess, more entertainment IPs are becoming exclusive to PlayStation. So they already had Spider-Man, now they got Wolverine. And some people are maybe speculating that even if the original deal for Indiana Jones was that it'll be multi-platform, that maybe Xbox would stump up the cash to make it fully exclusive to Xbox and PC. But again, Jez Corden sort of came out and discussed it, and I think in reply he he's under the impression that it is multi-platform. And that kind of just makes sense. I think it was a deal that was announced before the acquisition, or at least before the acquisition was I can't remember if it was before the acquisition was announced or completed. It was certainly before it was completed. And yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, they didn't announce what platforms it was at the time, so it's still up in the air at this moment. But I could easily see Indiana Jones falling into the category of games that were, I guess, announced or agreements were in place before the acquisition. So I think, if it did end up multi-platform, people said, "Oh, you said Bethesda games would come to Xbox only or Game Pass platforms where Game Pass exists only," they would just say, "Look, we're honoring a pre-existing agreement before the acquisition." I think they've got an easy out there. But who knows? Maybe they're becoming a little bit more aggressive. We've seen that they've honored agreements with Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, Psychonauts 2, Wasteland. There's been a lot of agreements or multi-platform games that they've published since they acquired some of these studios. And I think some people have maybe thought that they should have been a bit more aggressive with those games. And maybe they're going to turn a little bit more aggressive going forward. But I can't see them doing that. I think whatever the original agreement was, which I suspect was multi-plat, is probably what we'll end up seeing for Indiana Jones.
Well, I mean, the rumours are that it's exclusive. I mean, Baldman Game was saying he doesn't think Indiana Jones will be exclusive. He thinks it will be multi-platform. So that's quite interesting.
What I find interesting as well, though, from what Scott was saying, about how a lot of people online have been saying how Xbox should be more aggressive because of PlayStation conquering, having Spider-Man and things like Wolverine. But then I think the other side of the coin, though, is that, yes, as much as Marvel and superheroes are popular, there are also a massive subset of people who completely dislike the superhero Marvel franchise, think it's been done to death, and just aren't interested in it. So I kind of feel that, to a degree, maybe having, the superhero games, I don't think are a massive loss to not be on platforms like Xbox, because, I think there's so many people that are, for it or against it and just don't really care either way. Like, if it's a superhero Marvel game, even if it's got good reviews, there are so many people, Twitter comments and stuff that I've seen that they just completely disregard it because, I don't like Spider-Man, not interested, don't care, whatever, and just don't even bother. I kind of feel that maybe a lot more people might be the same with Wolverine, and I only say that because, statistically at least, I believe Spider-Man is probably one of the most popular superheroes out there, and if you're not interested in that, then is it right to then say that are people going to be against Wolverine? And equally, something like Indiana Jones, are there going to be many people that do care or don't care about it? I suppose it all depends on how it's done as well, because if it is, if Indiana Jones is an Xbox exclusive, and if it's meant to be Xbox's answer to an Uncharted game, which we've talked about in the past, then I think it would probably hold some ground. But if it is like a movie made into a game but glorified a bit, I don't know whether it'll catch on. Do you get what I mean?
I do. I mean, I always thought Tomb Raider and Uncharted were Indiana Jones games anyway, in my head. Do you know what I mean? There was that sort of tomb seeking.
When you look at the first ones, they are. But it's been so long since Indiana Jones has, been on the big screen, so to speak, that if anything, I imagine newer gamers at least will probably view it as the other way around, right? Oh, what's this game that looks like Uncharted?
Well, that's the thing. It seems odd now that we've got an Indiana Jones games that could potentially be sort of emulating what's already come before it. That's probably used Indiana Jones as an inspiration in the first place. It seems a bit arse upwards to me. But
I agree. I agree.
I've got another one for you. How about this week? GTA 5 graphic debacle. Seeing all of the GTA remasters on that list, do we think Rockstar are just focusing in the wrong area? Because do we really want a GTA 3 remastered or San Andreas remastered, or do we just want GTA 6? Do you know what I'm saying? Are they focusing in the wrong direction?
The rumours I heard is that those three are meant to be like GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas remasters are or were meant to be one package. Similar to, like the Mario 3D collection or something else. It's like 3 games in one, apparently.
But it's taking time and effort that they're not spending elsewhere, I'm guessing. I think that's my point.
No, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, well, it's hard to answer, I think, because it's kind of one of those things where it's been so long. Like GTA 5 seems to be this thing which is dominating the market, like almost 10 years since it first got released, that it just feels like it's never going to die. And I feel like, GTA 6 just seems so far in the distance because GTA Online is just making them so much money. I mean, I even adding on to what you was just about to say there as well. I also saw some comments kind of resurface from about 2014 when I think Rockstar originally stated that they was going to release a load of extra single-player DLC for GTA 5 to kind of expand on the story of the three main characters, whose all names I can't all remember. But then they canned it because GTA Online was doing so well, and it's only getting bigger now. So I kind of feel that even though, yes, GTA 6, I'd like to believe, is in the works, and I think that has been partially confirmed to some degree. We're not going to see it for a long time, right? But I think people I'm assuming here, but people like ourselves who may have played GTA 5 single player don't have a care about the online mode, but have good memories of the old school ones. I definitely would be looking forward to a remaster, specifically Vice City for me.
More so than GTA 6.
Only because we don't really know what GTA 6 is, apart from the fact that it does exist in some form. I mean, there has been some rumors in the past that GTA 6 is going to be based in the Vice City area, or a part of Vice City and expanded. Or it was going to be this incredibly massive open world game, even more so than 5, and it was going to link all the different areas in one game. You know, like San Andreas, Vice City, and wherever the other ones were. But that's a tough one. What about you, Scott? Do you have any thoughts on that question from Flat?
When it comes to GTA, then the only
Do you
the
care
first
about
thing that comes to
GTA?
mind is I couldn't really give
No?
a toss, if I'm being honest.
Not even. Not even GTA
well,
6.
Nah, I give Rockstar far too much of my money for GTA 5 for what was an ultimately very disappointing experience. In my opinion, I know a lot of people will just no, I didn't enjoy it. And obviously the online mode has just sort of taken over as its own thing, which I believe is one of the reasons we don't have GTA 6 now, is because online just exploded in such a way that they're generating so much revenue that it probably hasn't made an awful lot of sense to focus our attention on a sequel just yet. Otherwise, I imagine we would have heard about it by now if GTA Online didn't exist. So my sort of fondest memories of GTA are sort of down from the original top-down games, if you remember the first ones. But these days, I'm not really into them. So, a remaster for 3, couldn't care. GTA 6, when that gets announced, really won't do anything for me anyway. But we obviously know that, it's, Grand Theft Auto is kind of one of the biggest franchises in the world. It's going to be massive whenever that's announced. But I think it's just, they don't need to do it right now. People keep throwing money at them. Grand Theft Auto 5 has been in the top sellers in the MPDs in the States for 8 years every week. It's outrageous.
Yeah, but this comes back to my point of them, and I know I picked on the San Andreas remaster and stuff like that. I guess my real point was around GTA 6 is, they're re-releasing again GTA 5 on the third generation of consoles that's come along, and they're spending time and effort on this. It just seems crazy that, and even if you play GTA Online, you have to buy the game. I mean, it's not even a free-to-play part of the game, is it? It's just nuts. I'm getting so pissed off with Rockstar, if I'm honest, because I want a Red Dead 3, and, and that's my point. That's exactly my point. That is so far down the road that I'm thinking, well, how many more generations of consoles have I personally got to wait for Red Dead 3? Are we talking another 2 or 3? Because if GTA 6 is coming next, then do you know what I mean? And it's the same for Elder Scrolls as well. They've done exactly the same balls up with Elder Scrolls. They've released that kind of on 3 generations of console. Elder Scrolls 6 is still beyond Starfield yet. Do you know what I mean? I've got to wait another probably, 6-7 years, and it's already been 11 years since the last one. It's ridiculous. Yes,
that's rough when you think of it like that, isn't it? Yeah. But I guess the first question would be, Flap, is this remaster being handled internally, or are they have they outsourced the I guess the next gen versions, which is possible. I don't know if they've said either way at this point. So it could be that it's not necessarily taking anything away from GTA 6. I think. I mean, if you look at the effort that seemingly has gone into the next gen versions, it doesn't look like an awful lot of effort's gone in at all from what I've seen anyway. So I can't imagine it's taken that much time.
There's been a lot of people that I've seen online, like when those trailers came out, and there were people saying it looks no different. What was the point of even showing this?
Exactly.
I think that there have been. I think that's fair. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of.
Baldman Gamers just said. Sorry, Baldman Gamers just said he can't wait to play GTA 5 on his Alexa.
GTA 5 is the next Skyrim, isn't it? Really, where it's just going to be released on everything. for the next however many years.
Speaking of that, did you guys ever play the Skyrim Alexa game? Because
That was real. I thought that was like an April Fool's or something.
No, it existed. You could play it, and I did play it. Yeah, you leveled up and everything. It was fantastic.
Holy
you just
shit.
sit there,
Didn't
putting in your
realize.
voice commands and stuff, and then it would listen to you. You'd level up, and you'd attack and dodge, and it was bizarre. But it had the sound effects and everything. It was a great experience. I mean, you didn't play it for long. Don't get me wrong, but no, it wasn't an April Fool's. You could actually play it. I tried it.
Is anyone still playing that bloody Elder Scrolls mobile game they released as well? Is anyone actually still playing that?
Is that Blades?
I uninstalled it after about 2 days of playing it.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't even install it, if I'm perfectly honest.
When it got released for Switch, I tried it just to see if it was any different, but it was basically a poor mobile port onto the Switch, and the controls were janky as, or they were still janky as, I should say, and it wasn't worth the time, so you just immediately uninstalled, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But with the GTA stuff, what I was going to quickly say before I know this is going on a bit, but I know there's a one big community mod for GTA 5, which was like an RTX remaster or something, and it's phenomenal, like how graphically pumped up the game looks with this community-made mod. And what Scott was saying there, or I can't remember when you said it about, is this being outsourced? It seems like a perfect opportunity for Rockstar to almost take that mod and get some permission.
Yeah, but they're not. They're not. They're clamping down on the modders to make it more difficult for them to alter the game. It just seems crazy because, like you say, there's obviously such a community out there that want to make this game look better, and there's lots of people in the chat saying, and to be honest, that's been the narrative of this week, hasn't it? About how crap the GTA 5 trailer was for the now generation, let's call it. It was literally just cut and paste with, like Mav was saying, fun speculation, just some buzzwords like instant character swapping. It's like, well, it was never that slow in the first place, and something silly like more explosions or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Enhanced. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
What's enhanced? Is it going to be different? Because if you remember when the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions came out, they did actually introduce like the first person mode. So they did actually add something new when they ported it from 2 gens ago to last gen. Yeah, I'm getting. Did
you guys ever try the first person mode though? Because if you're used to GTA, like it just feels so wrong to play because you kind of lose all of the main vision that you normally have, obviously, but for the worst, I think. Like it was meant to make it more immersive. Maybe if you play the VR mods, which I think exist, or maybe they're official, but it's quite good. But yeah. Flap, did you play the first person modes?
Well, I flicked into it a little bit just to give it a go, and
then quickly didn't care.
Yeah, it's clearly a third-person game that allows you to have the viewpoint of first person. But it was just a gimmick. It was just so that they could put on the back of the box, now includes first-person mode. Do you know what I mean? No one, I don't know anyone that ever played it in that. It was almost unplayable.
Yeah, I think that let's all be honest here. The GTA, just GTA in general, they're not good to shoot guns in those games. I think the controls are incredibly flawed. If you compare it to an actual first-person shooter where you've got nice tight controls, GTA doesn't have any of that. It doesn't feel good to play. And in first-person mode, it really just highlighted how, in my opinion, bad it was to actually use the guns in that game. So I don't think it added anything. But yeah, I don't really understand what counts as sort of enhanced gameplay. I think even at the end of it, they just said "and more," and it's like, well, can you tell us what more is? Because you haven't told us anything else so far. So it's just like there's more. But the problem is, guys, like this thing's gonna sell. Do you guys think that this thing's going to continue selling?
I hope not. Well, to be honest,
see it back in the NPDs.
I think it's inevitable, right?
Because I'm assuming
I don't think it makes any difference.
Version.
I don't think it makes any difference, Scott. They're sitting on a big mound of money. I mean, how much money have they made out of Red Dead and GTA 5, the game itself, and then obviously GTA Online on top of that? They're just sitting on a mountain of cash. And I just don't know what they're doing with it. It just seems absolute crazy to me, but what do I know?
I just had fun speculation in the chat saying my 10-year-old daughter makes better Roblox videos than the GTA trailer.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, it's just the same trailer that we saw 2 generations ago. How can you do that? What do they think we're stupid? I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think
you know what is yes? I think they do.
Yeah.
They look at how GTA 5 is still selling, and they think these guys must be dumb as hell because they keep buying this 8-year-old game.
But the thing is, though, like I can't, especially with like new platforms like TikTok and stuff, which obviously a lot of the younger crowd use. We've got gamers that were born in 2009, which are probably now old enough to start playing and are discovering it for the first. I mean, yeah, they're 10 years old, but who didn't play GTA before 18?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
If you get what I mean. So there's so many people that are seeing it online, like growing up, not knowing what it is, seeing it, and then jumping into the game. And it feels new to them, but obviously the reality is it's been around for the last 10 years. But if you keep pumping in content, or you play on PC where there's mods, or GTA Online keeps having more content thrown at it, then like when will it end? Like it really has to. Something else has to completely overshadow it for it to die, I think.
I don't know. It has been diving, I think, again, Mav was saying, there's like a 90% dislike ratio. I think they're finally getting the message. It's just what do they do next? That's the thing. What's their plan B?
From the original question, is this kind of remaster of a remaster actually a test for how to upgrade the visual specs for what is GTA 6? Maybe they're just testing the waters.
I hope
project
not.
that's already popular.
Based on that trailer, Pucks, I hope not. Otherwise, people are in for a bit of a disappointment when GTA 6 comes out. Honestly, it's fairly straightforward, Pucks. It's just money. It's just a way to enhance that tail. Have a longer tail on GTA 5, even though it's already 8 years old at this point. It's just to try and extend that tail even further. Continue bringing in on your GTA 5 that allows them to take their time with GTA 6. I'm sure, regardless, I appreciate Mav's quite rightly pointing out that the dislike ratio on YouTube is ridiculously high, and that is pretty crazy for a GTA game. But ultimately, what's going to make the difference is this thing going to sell? I imagine it will. People love remasters of games. That's why they're so popular. The question I would have, though, and I don't know if they've actually said, I think I know the answer here, but I'm assuming this is like a new version. I'm assuming if you currently own the game, you don't get an upgrade to this. You have to rebuy the game.
Yeah, we've not even gone into the upgrade path.
Have they announced that bit yet?
I don't know. Have they?
I thought they had announced that the new one is not. Like, it's not a free upgrade. I'm sure they said you had to rebuy it, didn't they?
Oh, woof, that's even worse if that's the case.
Please correct me on that if you know.
Why don't they just make GTA Online a free-to-play app that you can download and have a dedicated team to put in more and more content in that, monetize the hell out of it, do whatever you want with that, and then just leave the GTA 5s, the GTA 6s, the GTA 7s separate, a little bit like they do with Call of Duty and Warzone. So, they're kind of linked but separate.
Problem is, people will buy the game, which is guaranteed profit.
Yeah, but that's fair enough. If they want to buy the game for a single player experience, then brilliant. But at the same time, they can monetize the hell out of the free online version. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do get what you're saying.
Other genres do it, so yeah.
Well, I know we definitely sidetracked a little bit there talking about GTA, but that was good fun. Any more guys you want to talk about before I move on to topic 2?
No, not particularly.
I think we can.
Cool, I'll do a quick roll call. So we've had quite a few people here. I haven't really said anything yet. So thanks for being here. We've got Fun Speculation, Stubbs Gaming, Super Cosmic Puma, Baldman Gamer, Meisuko, Shizno Elite here, Judzilla Music, Blackheart 1. I don't think I've missed any others. I'm scrolling up. I can't see anything else. Thanks for all being here. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Before I do move on, do we have any more comments at all, or are we good?
No, I think we're up to date. I think.
Yeah, I think I'm just enjoying Mav's relentless.
That's good.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, and the best thing about it is he's speaking the truth. He's absolutely speaking the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. But I think let's move on to topic 2, chaps. So this one is about more game delays. So, for better or worse, Battlefield 2042 has now been delayed from the 22nd of October to November 19th, which is not so bad. But we've also had reports of Dying Light 2 is now being delayed again from December 7th until the 4th of February 2022.
I'll tell you what, February next year is absolutely crazy. If you've got a PS5 and an Xbox, February is nuts.
Q1 next year for a lot of cross platforms is crazy.
We've never had a Q1 like this in living memory.
And I think as before I get onto the questions, this is kind of what we was all. I think a lot of different shows and us especially have also saying in the past about how next gen hasn't quite started yet for a number of reasons, but it's coming. And as you say, I think February, especially February March next year, is really the start of big things to come, and hopefully that momentum stays across all platforms.
Yeah, I think 2022 and 2023, just in general, pucks, even especially with these delays, are just looking to be, in my opinion, potentially two of the best years for game releases maybe ever. I know that might sound a little hyperbolic, but I think when you look at the games that are likely to release over that 2-year period, I think we genuinely are in for a real treat, regardless of which platform you guys play on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to throw some questions your way, Scott, first, I think. I've got a couple lined up here, but I'm going to throw a few your way first. So regarding game delays then, do you reckon there are, how many more titles should we expect to be delayed moving forward? Should we as gamers adjust our own expectations and maybe start to presume that delays will be more common for new releases moving into 2022 and beyond? I have got a larger kind of triggered question coming up, but given how the world has been, and which is obviously understandable, but among other factors about maybe a lot of developers haven't been quite ready for next gen, or maybe have, or rather they are aware that the gaming community have higher expectations than what maybe they were expecting, and have delayed the games to try to meet those, perhaps. Do you reckon, for whatever reason you'd like to suggest, do you reckon we're going to see a lot more delays moving forward of kind of this magnitude of games being delayed or delayed again, or coming up to near release and, oh, sorry, we need more time? Is this just a pandemic-based thing, or is this something you think we're going to see into the future as the world starts to recover?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can kind of try and tackle that in two parts, Pucks, because I think when you look at maybe the immediate future, so the last quarter of 2021, we've only got, less than 3.5 months left of the year. And realistically, there's probably not too much that can be delayed now. I mean, I've seen Stubbs mention delay Halo. Please don't delay Halo. But there are few.
Said that as well.
Yeah, there aren't too many games left, really, is there? We've got, at least on the Xbox side, the main ones that we're expecting is Horizon 5 in November, and obviously Halo in December. And I don't see either of those two delaying. We've obviously got COD. I mean, that game comes out like clockwork every year. I personally don't see that being delayed, and Battlefield's already been delayed once, but not too far. So I don't think we're going to see too many more delays, or at least public delays of game. And I want to emphasize public, because that kind of takes me on the second point, which is looking at 2022 and beyond. And I think what you'll probably find, and we saw a little bit of this during the PlayStation Showcase recently as well, is you'll likely see games get announced with no release date, for example, Wolverine, or in a lot of cases, at best, with a year. I think game developers will be very conscious about putting dates or short windows when they announce a game, at least initially, to be just a little bit cautious to ensure that they're setting sort of realistic expectations with fans, because the last thing that they probably want is, I know we kind of beat this drum a little bit, but something like Cyberpunk, where they almost had to have that game out, and we saw what happened because of that. So internally, I suspect we're going to see, well, we won't see it necessarily, but I think internally within game development studios, I think the past 18 months will have had such a dramatic effect on a lot of games going 2022, 2023, and probably beyond that we probably won't see or hear about. So games that maybe were due to release towards the end of 2022 may have now been pushed to 2023, but we won't necessarily know about it because it's either unannounced or they hadn't previously announced it. So we won't necessarily know those delayed. But I think the pandemic has just had such a profound effect on game development that, yeah, we are going to see, or we are going to feel the impact of it, whether we know it or not, for the next 3-4 years. I suspect, particularly at some of these large game studios that aren't set up for remote work. And, you look at someone like Moon Studios, they already work remotely, so those guys won't necessarily be affected. But then you look at 343, which is allegedly got over 2,000 people working on it. A game like that's absolutely going to be massively impacted by the pandemic. and I know a lot of people might say, oh, maybe the pandemic's just been used as an excuse. Some people maybe think that developers might be hiding behind it because they're having development issues. But there's one thing that we can say is that if the pandemic hasn't directly caused the delay, if the game was already having problems, then it would have made those problems worse or much more difficult to solve. So whether directly or indirectly, COVID will have had an impact, and we'll just have to wait and see. I think there won't be too many more delays this year because I don't think there's an awful lot left to delay. I certainly don't see Horizon 5 or Halo Infinite being delayed at this point. But then 2022 is kind of open at this point because God of War, for example, we saw that. Do we think that's going to hit 2022? Breath of the Wild, they originally said they hope that it'll be out in 2022. So they've even left that open to, I guess, subject to change at some point, depending on how development goes with that. And I believe Japan's been impacted more by COVID than maybe other development studios. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think the main thing from my perspective, though, just speaking to somebody who wants to play these games, is that just take your time. Don't rush these things out. I'd much rather they delayed the game and got it out in a better and, I guess, playable state than we have any more debacles like Cyberpunk or potentially what Halo looked like. I don't want these games being forced out just because they need to be out by a particular date. But this is a question for you guys, actually, if you guys don't mind, because I don't care about COD personally. You guys obviously played the Vanguard beta. I imagine you're both looking forward to, but I know you're both looking forward to Battlefield as well. With Battlefield's delay into November 19th, I believe it's now pretty much slap bang in the middle of COD and Halo. And I believe there's quite a big event in COD Warzone, which happens around this time of Battlefield's release. So my question for you as COD owners or COD players is, how do you think this delay is going to impact Battlefield in terms of its sales or player base, especially with the knowledge of how it's going to, or when it's going to release in relation to two other massive franchises?
Do you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah, I don't think it will make much difference at all, to be honest. I think the Battlefield fans are Battlefield fans, and they will wait patiently. You get Battlefield fans that hate COD, you get Battlefield fans that love COD. There's a whole mix of people, and I don't think it would make much difference, to be honest. I really don't. Whether Battlefield comes first or COD comes first. Like I say, if you're in the camp where you like one but not the other, it's not going to make any difference to those people. If you like both, then, to be honest, one's just moved from one side, from before release to after. I don't think it makes much difference, if I'm completely honest. I don't think it also makes any difference with Halo either. Again, I don't know the numbers, but I assume the majority of Xbox fans, let's call them, have Game Pass anyway. So Halo coming to that service for free, in inverted commas. Again, it's more of a matter of time, I suppose. It's what do you dedicate your time to in that short sort of window between these games launching and perhaps Christmas and getting all of these games finished or completed. It's it doesn't make any difference to me. I don't know about you, Pucks.
No, my take's very similar, actually. I think there are so many people out there who either love COD or absolutely hate and despise Call of Duty. But then, which is true, right? I mean, there's not really much middle ground in terms of that, or at least that's what the Twitter sphere would have you believe. It's very much like Marmite, you love it or hate it. But they're also, yes, they're similar games in terms of their first-person shooters, but in terms of how they feel and what the gunplay is like, they are vastly different. And there's a lot of people that really dislike the fast-paced nature of Call of Duty, but love the large-scale, slower-paced nature of Battlefield. I don't know about you, Flab, but I'm definitely someone who bounces between the two. I'll have moments when I feel like I just want some quick 10-minute run-and-gun gameplay and I'll jump into a COD match. But otherwise, if I feel like, actually, I fancy something a bit more open, vehicles, whatever else, I'll jump into Battlefield. I won't even... Warzone, for me, I completely as much as I love Call of Duty as a franchise, or at least especially I did in the past, I absolutely despise Warzone. I don't really like it. It's just for me at least, it's too different from the standard multiplayer that I'm used to and what I play Call of Duty for. But equally, I appreciate that it's super popular, loads of people play it. So I suppose to add to your question, Scott, I am kind of sitting there thinking, do people care much about Vanguard when so many people love playing Warzone because it's free to play, and Warzone earns Activision a hell of a lot of money, probably more so than just the standard releases, right? I don't, as far as I'm aware, I know Cold War did pretty well, but I don't know the exact numbers, but at least going by the vibe of the internet, it didn't seem to do as well as Modern Warfare, at least, or maybe it did very similarly well. But again, most people are playing Warzone because, the developers are integrating the Cold War gameplay into Warzone, which was obviously originally Modern Warfare, and they're going to be doing that again with Vanguard. Vanguard guns and mechanics and whatever else are going to move into Warzone as well. So, in terms of the profits and that kind of angle of it, I think it's going to be better than ever for Warzone players, because as much as they love complaining about it, it's all those complaints which put it in the forefront of everyone's faces, and especially in the streaming world, and people jump in and play it again because it's free. I think the only thing that puts me off is the large download size, which I don't care for, but I'm hoping Vanguard's not the same. But no,
there's been some
I don't
strange
think it's
things
going to make much
happening.
difference at all.
There's been some strange things happening in the chat, because obviously we were talking about Dying Light and Battlefield, but lots of people are saying about Halo being delayed, and I know obviously it has been delayed to December and stuff, but should it be delayed even further because of obviously it's not coming with Forge or the local co-op or campaign co-op? There seems to be some mixed opinions in the chat.
I've eyeballed some of these as well, and I think one of the things I saw was about similar to what you said about how Phil Spencer had said about they don't want to rush devs, whatever else, and I can't remember who said it, or that he's a liar because they are rushing out Halo or something. But I think at the end of the, it's two minds. I think because yes, we're gamers and he's a gamer, and obviously the people that making the games are gamers and they want this game to be out and released. And yes, in an ideal world, it doesn't matter when these things are released, but when you're considering such a big IP like Halo, and the fact that they already missed the 20th anniversary and they're trying to make up for it by re-celebrating the 25th anniversary this year round, like, there are timescales to games. Like, if you put something in development for too long, people's attention will just divert and wane, and by the time if you eventually release something after a hell of a long dev cycle, they're not going to care about it anymore, because people have managed their timescales and released things in specific time windows, and and that's what catches people eye, and that's what sells, right? So I appreciate, yes, we want games to be released when they're done, but in the changing world, which is now gaming, of what it appears to be, I don't think you can always just say release it when it's ready. But I also think it depends on the IP. It's a different question. Sorry, it's a difficult question.
I think because it's Halo and what it means to the Xbox brand, that not necessarily all of the above applies. I think there is pressure for them to get this game out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The IP, if it was Gears, if it was Forza, even Forza Horizon, but even Forza Motorsport, I think they would be happy to delay it yet again if they needed to. But because it's Halo, because it's the anniversary, I think also that perhaps when those very difficult conversations were happening, someone's knocking on, or perhaps let's assume it's happened in a meeting, and Phil Spencer sat down with 343 saying, "Brilliant, are we ready to go, guys?" And someone's got to stick their hand up and say, "Actually, I don't think we are." And he kind of looks up and he's like, "Pardon?" And it's like, "Well, how much longer do you need?" And they're saying, 6 months. He's like, "Well, you got a year. Get it done, get it fixed, get it done in a year." And they're like, "Okay, brilliant." And then they've realised that they still can't even quite get it done in a year. And he's given them that year to get it done. I could just imagine that happening, that being the scenario. And now, he can't lose face again, I don't think, delaying Halo for a second time, I don't think. Whether he should or not, I'm not arguing whether he should or not. I just don't think he could from a business perspective, to be honest. They're just going to have to launch the game in any state they can get it out in that's mostly playable, particularly the multiplayer aspect, and just patch it up later.
I think this is the advantage of it being a live game, like a service game, isn't it? Rather than the old ones, which was a complete package. We'll support it with a few extra maps and DLC, but that's it, job done. Like to now have it as a title, which is going to have more content added in the future. I think in a way that's the get out of jail free card in a way, because for the most part, at least from my perspective, Scott, you're the massive Halo fan out of the three of us. Please correct me if you disagree or if I'm wrong here. But a lot of people want to play Halo for the multiplayer, and that is the one thing which 343 are focusing on. So as long as you have that in your hands, that's great. I think that is the main thing people care about, and anything extra is exactly that. It's a fantastic extra or bonus to have. yes, it's excuse me. It's unfortunate that the campaign co-op stuff is being delayed. I know we were surprised ourselves. I think when we covered that a couple of shows ago, that there are more people than I think we anticipated really disappointed there's no co-op because they like playing with family members, whether local or part, a local or online, whether that's with partners or friends or did in your childhood. But I mean, again, Scott, this is probably more one for you. But is it really a big deal that the co-op is not there at launch if we're knowing it's going to come in the future? Again, considering it's a live game and there's going to be more content.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Pox, because I know you mentioned there Halo being a live service game, and I think we discussed this last time we discussed Halo, and I don't really like the term live service being used in Halo or for Halo.
It is, though.
But the multiplayer is, at least in my opinion, I don't necessarily.
Good distinction, yeah.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe the single player is a live service game. They've not necessarily, but it's really difficult because it's like, right, how define live service game, and you could very easily just define a lot of games as being live service. But the thing with the campaign is it's a story that has a start and an end, and there may be DLC. Obviously, there may be features like co-op that are announced, but in my opinion, I don't consider the single player campaign to be a live service game. The multiplayer, 100% that is live service. And I think I agree with sort of everything you guys have said, which is kind of like they've been given sort of time, and they've kind of had to get it out by the end of this year. And I think December is the latest they could get it out, and we can see that because they've cut features for launch. They've cut things from the launch of the game to ensure they can get it out this year. I've seen a few people in the chat talking about it, and I'm with some people who say, Forge, we don't really care. Personally, I'm not really too bothered about Forge. I'm not someone that uses it, and I don't think that's necessarily a game that has to be available at launch of the game anyway. The co-op is something that is a little bit closer to my heart, though, which I would really have loved to have seen at launch. But the way I'm looking at it is, would I rather play Halo Infinite in December without co-op, or would I rather play it in March with co-op? And the answer is, of course, I'd rather play it in December, because you're quite right, Pucks. Obviously, Halo is such a big multiplayer game that the campaign co-op will probably be a small portion of players, especially when you compare, when you understand the fact that the multiplayer is free to play. So the player base on multiplayer is going to be so much bigger than anything that's going to be seen in the campaign side. So campaign co-op is going to be played by such a small amount of players that it doesn't make sense to delay further for that one particular feature. But I didn't mention this at the time. What that does worry me about Halo, though, is, right, what's the rest of the game like? If they're having to cut features to get it out by December, and I don't think this will come as much of a surprise, but this game's probably going to be coming in hot. What I don't want is another situation that we had with, for example, Master Chief Collection, which I was so excited to play the Master Chief Collection when that first came out, and I was just bitterly disappointed. In fact, that's putting it lightly. It was horrific. It still astounds me to this day that the Master Chief Collection released in the state that it did. Like I say, if they're cutting features just to make sure they hit that December date, how's the rest of the game going to fare? Is the campaign going to be buggy? Is it going to be, are we going to have something like a Cyberpunk situation? Is it going to be a poor story because they've cut content to ensure that they could get out in time? Is the multiplayer going to have just a small amount of maps, which were complaints that I had about Halo 5? So these are all concerns that I've got about the game. Because of the fact that they're cutting features to launch by that date. So ultimately, we'll find out in December what it's like. I hope, as a Halo fan, that the campaign's good and that it runs smoothly, and that the multiplayer is good and has plenty of maps and content, and they can continue adding that through the live service features. But I think it's a fair concern for people to have, and I know a lot of people have shared similar concerns.
I think it's a fair concern, but to answer the question at the top of the topic, though, I think what COVID has done is it's changed our mindsets, and perhaps we do have to be a little bit more forgiving and understanding. Perhaps games do have to launch perhaps not in a completely ready state, unless we do delay them another 6 to 12 months and stuff. But I mean, how many updates to games? I mean, how many updates has Flight Sim had? Do you know what I mean? It's constantly getting updates, and I don't just mean the world packs. I mean, tweaks here and there and stuff. I think that's the world we live in now, to be honest. And I don't think. Yeah, unless a game is absolutely broken, and I think perhaps Cyberpunk is a great example of that, and I can't think of any others that are quite that broken off the top of my head. There probably are some, but No Man's Sky is probably a very good example of how the game didn't deliver the promise, basically, but over time it absolutely has, and it's probably better now than most people ever assumed it would be. Does that mean we'd want to wait this long for No Man's Sky? Don't know, really. I mean, obviously I take into account No Man's Sky is not a huge AAA game like Halo or anything, but I think perhaps, I think they should launch it early and fix and patch it as they go. Perhaps us, expecting a fully working, absolutely complete game is a little bit unrealistic. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
It is interesting, Flat, but and I appreciate it's difficult to compare like different mediums, but like, can you imagine like a movie that if you watched it 6 months later, it was a different or had more I guess you get that with director's cuts and stuff like that now, to be fair, but it's the way that I look at it is if the game is broken, then it absolutely should have been delayed. So Cyberpunk's obviously an extreme example of that. Yes, that game just needed more time in the oven. Small bugs and things like that, I can kind of live with, but obviously if they're game breaking, then it should have been delayed. I think where Halo comes into it, or where Halo I guess is maybe a little bit different, is it's just purely cutting features that they had previously said would be in the game at launch. Co-op is something that's huge in all Halo games, and that's now not going to be available for people to play at launch. I know people will say, oh, but it's going to be there in 3 months' time. They've said it's going to be there in 3 months' time. They also said Halo was releasing in 2020. Is it going to be 3 months? Is it going to be 6 months? If the game's broken at launch, are they going to have to push back those Season 2 and Season 3 updates to fix the game that they launched? So
it's an interesting one, though, because I think you said earlier, and PlayStation was quite a good example of this, I think devs are just going to walk away from release dates and stuff, and also perhaps features, because if the Halo team had said, actually, we're not going to launch with Forge or campaign co-op, from the very beginning, would we still be having this conversation now? Or do you know what I mean? Or is it because we was expecting it and it's now not going to happen, the fact that we're feeling a little bit aggrieved by it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think devs are going to have to be better and smarter at setting expectations of fans, because you tell someone they're going to get something and you don't give it to them, then of course they're going to complain. I think it's obviously a different situation, but you look at what happened with Horizon Forbidden West. They had previously stated that PlayStation 4 owners would be able to upgrade that game for free when it came out, and they they actually announced pre-orders for it, they had said no, you're gonna have to pay more, and people kicked off, rightly so, and they thankfully went back on that particular word. So I think they're going to have to be smarter, and I think we started to see that with some of the announcements of games where they're not putting dates, or at least they're putting very big windows on these games. But the thing is, you announce a game 3-4 years in advance in some cases, like we already know Elder Scrolls 6, that's been announced. Technically we're not going to see that for a long time, and it's difficult, I guess, for a game developer or a studio to really understand what impacts they're going to have throughout the development cycle that might impact the game. So I think really maybe what they should be doing, and I guess different people have different opinions on this, because I don't mind games being announced super far in advance. I don't mind knowing that a game's coming in 4 or 5 years. I like knowing that it's coming. I know people take offense to, when Microsoft announced like Fable, Perfect Dark, games like that are years out at this point. I don't particularly care for that, but it is something that you've got to be conscious of when you're setting fans' expectations about what they're going to get, and you've got to make sure that you're going to stick to that. At least in my opinion. You could say, oh, that's rather entitled, but if I'm putting down money for these games, then I'm quite, I guess, entitled to my opinion. But I think you are right though, Flat. We kind of got to we've got to adjust our expectations. I think in some respects we've got to be a little bit more forgiving, but it works both ways. Developers are going to be open and honest with us, I think, about what's happening, when things are going to come out. Be realistic about things. Like when Sony announced God of War Ragnarok was coming out 2021, when that was first announced, no one in the world believed them, but they still said it anyway. And then obviously it turned out right, it's actually 2022. So I think it works both ways. We've got to be a little bit more understanding as consumers, but them as developers maybe need to be a little bit open and honest with us as well.
So, Scott, I know you kind of touched on this when I very first asked the question, but you're kind of lining me up, I think, for the second part of what my full question is regarding delays and stuff. I think I'll put this one to you first, Philip, actually. So, when should we expect delays due to the world crisis to end? I don't mean this to be insensitive by any means, so forgive me if I misword this. But, of course, the world crisis is terrible. We all know it's true. It's affected thousands, hundreds, millions of people across the globe. But I think you've both touched on it throughout your points about devs do appear to be are using this as a reason for delays, which is genuine. But then you could also argue potentially that a lot of all different vast industries across the world have been transitioning and have transitioned to fully working from home and stuff since early last year. So do you reckon, moving forward at least, because obviously it's still in place now, it's still affecting a lot of people, but as the world does start to recover from this, do you reckon moving forward, or even possibly now, do you reckon that devs have been using the world crisis pandemic as a reason for the delay, just to make fan disappointment and backlash easier to deal with, or to potentially use it as a mask to for possible overestimation by management of when things should be done? Like you said there, Scott, Ragnarok 2021. Are you sure about that? We haven't seen anything yet, and you're telling me it's going to be out in 8 months' time, wherever it was at that moment. So long story short, Flab, do you reckon moving forward, is the pandemic going to still be used as a reason, and is it legitimately going to be the reason, or do we reckon it is things like management overestimation and trying to push things out the door quicker than what they just possibly can do? Or do you reckon devs haven't quite caught up with working from home after a year and a half?
Well, I think it's probably all of the above, depending on the dev and the situation, and particularly the size of the studio. I mean, if it's a very small studio working on an indie game, then that's probably a hell of a lot easier to coordinate locally or work separately from home on a game like that. And so perhaps the global pandemic isn't much of an excuse for that kind of thing. But if we're talking about studios with hundreds, if not thousands of developers, then I think that absolutely is going to be a reason for games to be delayed. I think perhaps the pandemic has changed our workplace, and I don't know if anyone in the chat has had the same. I don't know about forever, but for a very long time, I think lots of companies have actually seen that one of the biggest overheads that any business has is its staff, but followed by things like premises and things like that. So if they can pay people to work from home and can do it in a structured sort of way that can still deliver an output, then I think lots of big businesses will look at doing that. I remember packing up my desk in the office, March 2020, I believe, and I've literally not been back to the office since. We're all working from home, we're all able to do the same job, and there's questions like, well, do we need the office then? Because that's an expensive overhead. Do we need the office?
So, I appreciate you're in a different environment, but has that affected your work output? Have you been able to perform just as well, or has there been issues?
Probably more. I mean, I used to spend a lot of time driving around the country, going to meetings and stuff that I don't do anymore. So I can actually probably technically put a lot more hours in now than I ever did before. So in terms of output, then that's probably a lot better. I'm not sure if that's the same in game dev stroke studio circles, not really sure. And obviously there is no compromise for there's no comparison with having face-to-face communications, particularly when you're talking about something that's an art form, shall we say, or even perhaps the technical aspects with building an engine and stuff like that. I appreciate that that human contact is sometimes really important. But they've had to work ways around it. So I think that perhaps a lot of game studios might continue to work in the way that they kind of currently are, going forwards for the long term. And so, like Scott was saying, perhaps they have to be a little bit more realistic in their terms of delivery, in terms of dates and features and stuff like that. And us as gamers, like I say, have to be a little bit more understanding and forgiving that things aren't what they were. So I think it's a long-term issue that's here to stay. I think this obviously impacts huge game studios and developers much more than it would a small indie studio, which is kind of cool, really, because you wouldn't really want it affecting small indie studios and devs because that's a real make or break for them. That is literally are we going to be able to pay everyone their next paycheck? Other than someone like 343 Industries with Microsoft's backing, that's not quite such the same pressure on them. But I think delays like this are a thing of the future as more and more people sort of get used to working from home constantly, to be honest.
It's an interesting point you raised there, actually, as well, about how, yes, you saved a lot of money not travelling. You're all accustomed to working from home now. And obviously, I'd like to assume that that's the same case for a lot of the devs at these, as you say, smaller studios as well as the AAA ones. And I think AAA is obviously the focus here in regards to delays as being, the main topic here, just to bring it back a little bit. But because one of the things that you kind of, you caught me on was you're saving a lot of money, you're not having to travel a lot, you're still doing really good work. And in fact, you just said, you mentioned about actually you feel that you could do more. And I think especially in the game industry where crunch is, this big bad evil thing which does exist, we know it happens. It obviously, it's no secret that, crunch in a different form does exist across all other industries. But I think given how games and game dev work in terms of trying to sell things, it's obviously seen as a bit different, and nobody wants to be seeing anyone almost killing themselves just to get a game out at a particular point. But
crunch comes into this as well, doesn't it? Because they as we were saying, Call of Duty, love it or hate it, they do. They very, very rarely, I can't remember a Call of Duty that's been delayed and stuff, and I don't know how hard they crunch to get that deadline every single time. But crunch comes into it as well, doesn't it? And I guess managing crunch from home is slightly easier. I don't really know. It's an interesting one. No one's really looked or talked about how crunch affects home workers like that for getting a game out on time. It's an interesting one. I'd love to speak to a dev about how that happens.
Well, I suppose, the other point... Sorry, Scott, I'll get... Just want to quickly... because what you said earlier about, being from home, you feel like you could do more hours, and crunch is bad enough as it is, and if you feel that you can do more work at home, it does make me wonder if management at some of these companies has been, well, you're at home, you're not wasting time driving in, so you can work even more hours under the sun to try and get this thing done, is it possible that the reason we're seeing these delays is because of the fact that devs are working from home, therefore probably feeling they have to put more hours in and feeling burnt out, and that is the reason? Do you know what I mean? Like, hopefully people start to adapt. It's more of an open question than a particular topic I'm trying to bring up, because I'm aware we've got one more topic we want to get onto before the end of the show. Scott, what are your thoughts on the question at hand? I know you was about to say something, sorry.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, when you're talking about working from home and the impact that's having on anything, obviously different industries are going to be impacted very differently. So me and my work, we've benefited from it. We switched to basically a fully remote working policy. Obviously it was basically enforced at the beginning of the pandemic, and essentially what we've come to realize is that, look, we're just as productive and we can save costs as a business. But then on the personal level, someone like myself has a better work-life balance. But I think when it comes to game development, I think that's very different because it's such a collaborative thing. And I think some developers have spoken about the challenges of working from home. Just something as simple as, getting testing feedback. You can't just tester can't just come and sit down next to a developer, play that, give feedback, and then it can be acted on.
That's the point, yeah.
You've got things like...
They're doing it over GeForce Now.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting though, because I wonder if maybe GeForce or streaming services have been something that they've adapted, because I remember hearing I think it was either Joe Neat or Mike Chapman of Rare was speaking about the development of Sea of Thieves throughout the pandemic, and just one of the challenges that they discussed was something as simple as downloading the latest build of the game. if you work remotely, you've got to download tens, if not more, gigs of data to download the latest build of the game to either test it or to make your own contribution to that particular build. Like, just little things like that are made so much more difficult, especially, if you've got somebody who works maybe where they don't have particularly good internet connection, and you've got a developer now who has to download 40 gigs worth of data because they need to get the latest build of the game, but they're on maybe a 10 meg connection. I don't think everybody's in a fortunate position where they can get like gigabit fiber to their home, and that's just purely sort of like logistical difficulties, never mind sort of the difficulties that the collaborative process in game development would have by working remotely, where, like, say in my position, I'm more productive at home, mainly because I'm not chatting shit in the office for 2 hours of my 8-hour working day. I'm actually working for those 2 hours now. But I guess for game development, if you've got a team of developers working on a particular feature, to put it as simply as possible, and they're all working remotely, I imagine that's rather difficult to do. And I think what we'll probably see is, particularly in the larger studios that weren't already working sort of remotely, I imagine we'll see the vast majority of those return to office working as soon as possible, because they'll likely see productivity go back to what it was pre-pandemic. I imagine all developers have had production impacted by this. I don't think any developer really will have seen a benefit to working from home unless they were already working from home. I mean, that's just me sort of looking from the outside in, and it's a rather uneducated guess, concern I'm not a developer by any stretch. And I think maybe the concern there is, Pucks, when you're talking about crunch, is when they do start working from the office, if they've decided not to delay the game, is that going to lead to more crunch because they've lost time during the pandemic and they need to make that time back up now that they're back in the office? And I hope that's not the case, but a lot of these AAA devs unfortunately work in the States. And I say unfortunately, and I mean that because obviously workers' rights in the States are horrific. We've got it quite good here in the UK, I think, but I think developers in the US simply don't have the same workers' rights as maybe we're used to in the UK, and will maybe feel forced or mandated to actually do additional overtime just to get a game out on time, which is obviously the situation I think we all want to avoid.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, thank you for your comments, chaps. I'm aware of the time, so I would like to move on to the third topic, if that's all right. But before I do, have you seen any? Have you got any comments to read out at all that you've seen in the chat? I've seen that chat seem very vocal regarding this topic.
Yeah, not particularly. Yeah, everyone's sort of sharing their own stories around working from home and how lots of companies weren't set up. I mean, It depends on your line of business. I think most companies weren't prepared for everyone to work from home, particularly around things like secure VPN and proxy servers, and obviously online file storage and stuff, and didn't necessarily have the bandwidth to be able to work effectively, which isn't so bad when you're just moving Excel spreadsheets and Word documents around. That's not a huge deal. But when you're, like Scott was saying, when you're moving sometimes tens, if not hundreds of gigabytes worth of game, engine data, assets and stuff around, I can imagine that that's a real problem for game studios that most businesses don't have to suffer. I can imagine it's been a real challenge for them, and that the pandemic is a genuine excuse for a lot of the delays. Probably not all, but I'd guess the vast majority.
I've just seen a really good comment here from Super Cosmic Puma as well, which kind of encompasses what I was trying to say in a nice little sentence. Saying about, because gaming is so collaborative, there must be points where working remotely delays the process. Now they have experience of the problems caused by the pandemic, which they weren't really ready for, which is true, right? Again, as Scott was saying, you can't, usually a programmer can sit next to a tester or something, or a designer, get stuff done. Can't do that anymore. So I suppose the whole crux of my question was mainly due around, yes, these things take longer now, so therefore our timescale is going to be adjusted as such, or our management going to be just as harsh as ever and still request things to be done as if they're doing it just as quick as if you're working in the office right next to each other. But unfortunately, we won't know until it all happens. So, but no, thanks everyone. Thanks for your comments, panel and chat. You've been very vocal tonight. I'm going to quickly do another roll call. So, Indie Gamers here, Ballman Gamer, Pyro, M, Mexico, Stubbs, Super Cosmic Humor, Wandering Dutch, Dragon Wolf, Joshua, I think I said Mexico already, but I'll say it again. Arturo Trevino, UK Dazarus. Luke Steele is here. Thank you all very much for being here. Hope you're enjoying the show. So I'm going to start the last topic now, which originally I was wondering if this would how long this would last and if we'd even reach this far into the show. But with one more topic left, we've got our last half an hour. So I think, guys, we can do it. So topic 3 is about the latest rumours that have gone around once again about further Xbox acquisition stuff happening online. Now, I know this has all been done.
Stubbs, you can tune out now, mate.
Yeah. I know.
It's all right. We're not going to mention the word Sega, don't worry.
Well, you say that, I might bring it up in a minute, but
okay.
No, it's well, I've just seen it. It's one of those things that keeps coming up again on particular threads or tweets online, and then articles and the world's online journalism takes it by the horns and makes it into something massive and big, to the point I've even seen photoshopped images of the Bethesda Xbox acquisition thing, when it's like all the different IP on one like horizontal line with the stripes for it, and people have replaced that with I've seen ones with Sega IP on there, Ubisoft, I think
it's a wish list.
EA or someone else I saw. Yeah, so again, this is because it's all rumor. We don't know if it's true. There's not really much to kind of get into in terms of specifics. But I'll start with you, Flap. Actually, so seeing as these rumors keep appearing, do you think that it has any more, if any, substance than it did before? And assuming the more we read into this, it kind of makes me think, at least, if it keeps coming up, does it have substance? Because I've even seen some comments out there that suggest that this rumored acquisition, as also has also been said before, is just as big as the Bethesda one, which obviously makes people a lot really excited as well as unsure. But do you have a feeling this is true?
Well, I need to ask a question first. I think, was this ACG that tweeted that there was a big acquisition coming?
Yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago now that he tweeted that.
Yeah, now he never actually specified who it was. I think everyone's assuming that it's Microsoft and Xbox because of the rumoured size of the deal, but it's not even, I don't believe, being clarified that it's actually Xbox stroke Microsoft that are the ones at the table. Is that correct?
Well, the rumours that have come about this week have been, I guess, have sort of reignited that fire, shall we say. And I think a lot of people are putting two and two together and getting 45 or something. Yeah, I think that's maybe part of it, is people are assuming that the leaks are, I guess, thing is, a lot of these things, they aren't even leaks. It's like someone like Tom Warren tweeting a picture of the Cookie Monster or something, and people are like, holy shit, Microsoft are buying someone. But then people are linking those sorts of things to ACG's tweet previously, and they're assuming they're talking about the same thing. I mean, even someone like Colt Eastwood posted just something like, I've got some cool stuff. And he's obviously trying to drum up interest in his channel because he wants to talk about it and he wants to get people views. But, there's nothing to say that he's actually talking about. And I'd say it's pretty certain that he's not talking about an acquisition. But, yeah, I think people are kind of just putting a couple of different comments together, flabbing, assuming that they're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah, let's not get things wrong. The Bethesda deal was a massive deal for Xbox and in gaming in general, in my opinion. If Microsoft were to go and make another huge acquisition, I think I'm a little bit tamed to it now. Not that I wouldn't be pleased on some level, but I think the only thing that it would actually do for me is that I would be able to play whatever games they are for free, again in inverted commas, on Game Pass. Unless it's...
I've just seen.
Go on.
Sorry, it goes in line with what you're talking about. It's Rewarding Dutch, actually, who says, it isn't a rumour, but the readiness to talk about it may be earlier than people think. It is Xbox/MS and another larger. But again, not quite ready to talk about it yet. So,
but how do we know it's not a rumour? Who's confirmed that's not a rumour? Because, like I say, I was under the impression this came out by ACG and he didn't actually specify who it was. So I'd be intrigued to know.
I've seen some comments in the chat, and I think Wandering Dutch managed to get ACG on one of his previous shows. So I think I'm assuming that's where it's come from. Dutch, please correct me there.
To be honest, I mean, even if it is Microsoft, and let's assume that it is Microsoft and those rumours are correct. Like I say, if Microsoft were to buy another huge suite of studios and stuff. I guess the benefit for me is that it would be free in Game Pass. I think Microsoft are in a fantastic position as they are right now in terms of Game Pass and global sales and things like that. So would another massive acquisition like this, be another huge leap forward? I don't think it would be the huge leap forward that buying the Bethesda or buying the ZeniMax studios was, if I'm honest. Like I say, it would be good for me as a gamer because I'd be able to play those games as part of the Game Pass subscription. But beyond that, I don't really know. If those games were fantastic, whatever studio it is, if those games were fantastic and worthy of buying, I'd probably buy them and play them anyway. So, do you see what I'm saying? All I'm getting out of the deal personally is just more value for Game Pass, which, let's face it, it's always a good thing. But
I wonder if that's what people are getting excited about. I'm wondering if that's why people are getting so excited about it, because they know that, like, if it was oh man, I've gone blank. Who makes Far Cry again? Ubisoft. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, if it was something like Ubisoft, you get all their IP now on Game Pass. Like, holy cow, I get that for the same price of Game Pass. That's amazing. I think that's why people get excited, right? Rather than
they do.
I don't think people care about the acquisition itself.
It's not going to be. It's not going to be EA. It's not going to be Ubisoft. It's not going to be Sega. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
But then, if some of the other rumours, at least that I've seen, that
could be Warner. Some
of these comments were just saying that, but it's meant to be something that's just as big, or not quite there, but at the similar scale of Bethesda. And I think those comments, especially again, I know it's all rumour, so it's just speculation, but it's sure enough to get people excited, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when it comes to the size, and this is just rumor and speculation. It'll always be rumors and speculation until it's formally announced. I'm kind of with Stubbs when he says that there. And I think there are a few developers or publishers, I think that would rank on the scale of Bethesda. I think, because there are a few publishers out there, you would be looking at something like Take-Two, Ubisoft, or EA, which I think just don't seem realistic in my opinion. And so the way that I look at this personally is, were there any rumors whatsoever about Microsoft acquiring Bethesda or a company on the size of Bethesda before they announced Bethesda?
You know what? I heard someone, and I think it was, who's the PlayStation guy that Boom has on his show? Oh, what's his name? Oh, he does the PlayStation trophy room. Chat, help me out. I know he's been. I think Stubbs,
Mr. 8-bit, is it?
No. Stubbs did an interview with him. He actually mentioned Bethesda, and I think he was actually joking at the time, or ZeniMax. And I remember thinking, my God, that would be a deal. And then thought no more of it until sort of 6 months later, and it's like, oh my God, that's actually happened.
Yeah, I think if I remember rightly, the rumors originally were that PlayStation were acquiring Bethesda. I think that was the very first rumor about it, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure I recall seeing things like that. But at least I don't think there was any credible rumors or leaks, especially to the level of speculation that we've seen this past week. And I think those sorts of things, because they're done at such a high level, especially if it's involving publicly traded companies, that these things are going to be under very strict and tight NDAs. That mean that they're not going to go out there. So the way that I look at it is, when these are discussed and when these are speculated, particularly to the level that we've had this past week, is that it's probably not true. Can you remember E3? And there was rumors of Xbox were going to announce another 4 or 5 or 6 studios at E3, and obviously that turned out to there wasn't even one, and there hasn't even been one since. So it's very difficult to put to sort of any. It's very difficult. We're not talking about just a leaking of a game here, which I think is fairly easy to believe. It's trying to speculate around one company spending billions of dollars on another company, which I guess comes with a lot of different legal complications and NDAs, and to the point where I don't think it would necessarily leak at least a week or weeks ahead of time. So it is interesting. I mean, it's fun to sort of speculate, and I think actually let's just say this out there: Microsoft are going to buy someone soon. Probably. I think PlayStation are going to buy more people soon. Tencent are going to buy more people soon. It's inevitable. I think we're in a market at the moment where developers are probably valued at the highest they've ever been valued. And if you're going to sell, like, now seems like to be a really good time to sell, and particularly when Microsoft really need more studios to develop content for Game Pass. I think it's inevitable that we're going to see developers being acquired over the next 12 to 24 months and beyond. So, if Microsoft do announce something in a couple of months' time, I don't think these leaks necessarily point to that. I think that's just inevitable. But it's just really difficult to see it on the level of Bethesda, just because it gives you such a small pool of publishers to discuss when you look at it from that perspective.
I've just seen a comment from Wandering Dutch as well, actually, which is an angle I hadn't considered. I think it's really good, saying... he says both Sony and Microsoft don't want Tencent swallowing up the studios.
We've mentioned that. Yeah, we see. It's not so much. This is what we've said from the beginning. It's not so much about Xbox versus Sony. It's almost Xbox and Sony versus, everyone else. And we thought that might have been Amazon. We might thought it might have been who was the other people that had a stab at streaming? I can't remember now. Google with Stadia or Tencent. I genuinely think that, as much as there's healthy competition between Xbox and PlayStation, I think they are they're on the same side almost, or in the same team, or at least playing the same game. I think that's what I'm saying. They might be different teams, but they're at least playing the same game. Whereas people like Tencent and even Stadia and Amazon, they're playing a different game. And I think that worries Sony and Microsoft to a certain degree with where they
can bring up Stadia. Are they even in the game anymore? They've kind of disappeared, haven't they?
They were never in the game to begin with, Box.
Yeah, well, I know, but I think people began to think maybe they were, but then, when they started having some of their very, very few exclusives on their platform, but then they very quickly became multi-plats, didn't they? After the future of Stadia seemed very bleak after about 8 months, whatever it was.
Yeah, Tencent is obviously a big part of it, and I've seen Dutch's message there, and of course, it's almost defensive, isn't it? Like they're almost acquiring these studios to prevent somebody else from acquiring them, because
it's
as soon as somebody else acquires them, you potentially losing that content from your from your platform, which obviously they don't want. Phil Spencer has said on numerous occasions that someone like Amazon and Tencent and Google are their main competitors, not Sony and Nintendo. Obviously Google maybe less so now because of the way Stadia sort of panned out, but Amazon are obviously still big in it. We don't know maybe what Netflix's plans for gaming are. It seems very small at the moment, but that could potentially go further in the future. So it does often seem sort of almost a defensive maneuver, not just to get content for your platform, but to ensure that the content doesn't get taken from your platform from another developer. And Tencent's a weird one, because I don't think anything they've done necessarily just yet has had a negative impact on PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo owners, but it very much has the potential to in the future.
And that's the thing, and you're absolutely right, because I think Tencent are actually in a position to actually go around and swallow up some of these games, and then just sit on them and allow them to make money on these other platforms. But then imagine, I don't know, 5-10 years down the line, Tencent would then want to release their own console or whatever. And that might seem real pie in the sky, but I don't think it's beyond reason. And then all of a sudden, they've got all of these games that they can then actually call exclusive to their system. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair. Do you think we're going to live in a world in the not too distant future where we've got Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and Tencent's console in the space?
Perhaps another. I mean, not necessarily Tencent, but and perhaps they might buddy up with someone else that actually makes the console a little bit. When you think about how PlayStation came about with Nintendo in the first place and stuff. It just makes you wonder, what the future actually holds. And like you say, if Tencent have a lot of these large games in their portfolio, and whilst they're happy to share them at the moment out and about, once they're Tencent's games, as it were, they can then do what they want with them at some point in the future, can't they? It's it's an interesting one.
Oh, definitely. I've seen you've also put a poll up, which is
yes,
and I've seen the chat's been a bit interesting as well. I've seen some comments in the chat to and fro between a few people about having sources of information and stuff, which I can kind of see both sides in that. If you have information, obviously you're not going to leak it, right? Because you don't want to lose that point of information. But at the same time, I mean, outside of potentially someone in our chat having an inside source, that goes for anyone, right? I mean, if you have an inside source somewhere, I mean, I'm sidestepping a tiny bit here, but sometimes we hear people that have inside source. I'm talking about in the larger Twitter sphere, people that always get their name called out on talk shows like this because they've said something which has sparked a rumor. But do you reckon there's any kind of any possibility that some of these companies are almost purposely spoon-feeding information to select people so that it does create buzz around the industry to potentially get people talking about something, so that by the time something is announced, everyone's all potentially excited for something that could be massive?
Well, no, I agree. And David Jeff, he said about the PlayStation showcase, and there's something absolutely mind-blowing coming. And as much as perhaps to even now, I don't know what game he was referring to. Did you see that post, Scott, around?
Yeah, I think that was probably Wolverine.
Was that Wolverine? Yeah, so Wolverine
that's
at best.
The only thing I don't think he said.
That was a 20-second CGI. Well, obviously, just the name Wolverine in itself was enough to get people really excited. But, and like you say, Pucks, perhaps a little bit of a leak of information like that to the right person, an influencer, let's call them. It does build hype, and probably as long as people don't feel hard done by at the end of it, because if someone's overhyping, that's when it becomes a little bit perhaps dangerous or destructive to a certain degree. But Jeff Grubb's normally a good one, isn't he? He's normally sort of leaking out bits and bobs, and he tends to have more of a handle on Xbox side of things, I think. Would you agree, Scott?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is just when you compare sort of Xbox and PlayStation, is Xbox are far more leakier than PlayStation. I think it's fair to say. I think it's rare that Sony stuff gets leaked. We've been in situations in the past where like entire E3 conferences of Xboxes have been leaked ahead of time, and PlayStations do seem to be in a better place in terms of being able to keep a lid on those things. But yeah, when we're talking about someone like Jeff Grubb or Jez Corden, what they're often talking about, like I said earlier, is kind of the, I guess, smaller things in the grand scheme of things, such as games and things like that. I think when you're talking about acquisitions, I think there are probably legal things around it as well that I imagine prevent people that maybe have that information discussing it sort of in public, because you're not just talking about the announcement of the game. You may be talking about things like that impact share prices and things like that. And I imagine people are maybe a lot more conscious of sharing that information because of that impact, and maybe they could get into some legal trouble if they were to leak something, or probably more than likely they're going to get somebody else in trouble, whoever their source is, if they're found out. And I guess what they probably want to do is ensure they keep whoever their source is sweet. But I think David Jaffe, I do find it him a little bit difficult to watch, shall we say, and I'll maybe leave it at that. I think sometimes, often, there's a lot of hyperbole around things, and I think that comment is an example of that flap, where Wolverine was not. It was a good announcement. Did it blow my face off? Like he sort of made it out like it would? Of course not. But I guess few things would. But there's a lot of hyperbole in it, isn't there? And I think maybe part of the problem is just in the gaming sphere in general is a lot of people can or will say things like, something amazing is going to happen, but they don't say what. And then something amazing happens a week time, and it's like, that was it. And it kind of maybe gives a little bit of a, it makes it seem like maybe they've got insider knowledge when maybe they don't. And it's difficult to understand like who to believe or what to believe. Wonder Dutch has just mentioned that Special Nick of Xbox Era is usually spot on. And yeah, I agree. I listen to the Xbox Era podcast, and he does seem to get a lot of things right, even just little things like who the PlayStation Plus games are going to be for a particular month. So it's obviously he's got his sources, but he's even spoken about in the past where like he speaks with sources and asks what he can actually say or not, because there's certain things that his sources might have that maybe they don't want getting out in public. So it's really difficult. I think all we can do is sort of speculate as much as we can, but it just seems like over the past sort of 2 years we've done a lot of speculating about Sega, about Ubisoft, about Warner Brothers, and things like that. And I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. Ultimately, we'll just have to wait and see. I think maybe a good place to look at it is like, who should they buy and why? And I think Stubbs has mentioned it in the chat earlier today, which is Oh, cheers, Indy. Thanks for thanks for
Hyperbole,
correcting that, mate. Hyperbole. Apologies, mate. We can maybe speculate who it is. Like I say, Stubbs earlier on today mentioned that Xbox are missing a fighting game. And they don't have a developer who can take on something like Killer Instinct at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see if they are trying to fill holes with their purchases, which is kind of how I think Xbox will go about it in the future. I think they'll be very targeted or specific acquisitions to fill gaps in their portfolio rather than something that's as huge as Bethesda. I think maybe they'll look at a developer who can take on a fighting game, or maybe a developer that's more focused on platformers or kid-friendly games or something to try and fill those gaps. That seems to make a little bit more sense, in my uneducated opinion. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's all
You've
good
caught
stuff.
You've caught him sleeping. You've caught him sleeping.
No, sorry, no. I was reading some of the things in the chat, and actually, because the results of the poll have just come in as well. So, Flap, you put a poll out on the chat. Would you still be massively hyped for a huge Xbox acquisition? 15 votes
closer.
in total. Yeah, 53% say yes, they would be massively hyped. 46% say no.
I mean, what would you vote on that? Where would you be on that?
I put yes for that one, but more so in massive. But I've kind of changed my own interpretation of massively hyped. It's not as if similar to what I was saying to you just a minute ago. It's not the fact that it's a big acquisition that I'm excited for. Like, it's not the business side of things. It's more me then knowing that, by extension, those things should therefore be coming to Game Pass at no extra cost to me, which is, as well as future titles, which is the thing that gets me going, which is why I'm saying yes. I think that's what most people are probably thinking as well. But, again, it's the interpretation of the question, I think. But, no, I thought maybe it'd be a bit more different than that. It's quite close. So what did you reckon? Was you expecting more yeses or more nos?
I was expecting more yeses, in all honesty. And and to be accurate to my exact wording, would I still be massively hyped for a huge Xbox acquisition? I'd probably put no, in all honesty, only because the Bethesda one was so huge. For me, and perhaps I'm wrong, and it's my opinion, but the Bethesda one moved the Xbox game studios from kind of it being kind of okay to like, holy crap, they've got all of Bethesda as well. That's put them in a really strong position. Now, they can still mess it up. They're not home and dry by any stretch of the imagination. And I think with the Bethesda studios under their belt, they can really challenge, and all of the others, but they can really challenge Sony at their own game. And that's brilliant because, as we know, competition drives innovation and stuff like that. And if all of a sudden PlayStation feel threatened, they're going to up their game even further. And, we as consumers win on that. I guess my point is that if they were to buy Warner Brothers, does that have the same impact? No, I don't think it does, because I think Microsoft are already at a point where they can deliver some huge games and be really competitive with PlayStation. Does adding more to that make them more competitive? I'm not sure it does. Like I say, it sounds odd, but I think just as a Game Pass subscriber, that's the way I win out of this, if that makes sense. I just get more games that I can play for the service and makes it more, much better value for money, in my opinion.
Did you vote on the poll, Scott? What was your answer, if you don't mind sharing? And thoughts to that?
So I voted yes because, I mean, I think the difficult thing is kind of like your interpretation of massively hyped, and the way that I interpreted that was, would I be excited? Yeah, of course. Because what does that mean to us as Xbox owners and in particular Game Pass subscribers?
I think on massively hyped, I kind of meant to Bethesda to the Bethesda acquisition level of hype. Would you be hyped to that kind of level?
I don't think so, because like I say, there are very few developers that are publishers. It's important to maybe say publishers here, not developers that they could actually acquire at that level. Like I mentioned earlier, you're looking at Take-Two, EA, Ubisoft. And no, I wouldn't. Would I be excited if they bought Ubisoft? No, because it is actually yes, because we'll probably get another fucking Splinter Cell finally. But
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, but probably not. No, because I think you're right, Flap. I think the Bethesda acquisition kind of moved the needle in a way that very few publishers could have. But that doesn't mean other acquisitions wouldn't be exciting, and that's for a few reasons. Because I know a few people would say like, "Oh, you shouldn't want big companies sort of gobbling up other companies, because that's bad for competition, things like that. But I think as a gamer and as a Game Pass subscriber, it's good because I'm going to get more games as part of that subscription. And secondly, I look at things like Psychonauts 2, and I look at the impact that I think the acquisition has had on Double Fine's development on Psychonauts 2, and how that is arguably my favorite game so far this year. And it wouldn't have been that good a game had Xbox not acquired Double Fine, because they simply wouldn't have had the resources, the time, or the finances in order to finish that game. And Microsoft afforded them that luxury. And ultimately, everybody, gamers benefit from that because they got a better game out of it. And that's kind of what's exciting about potential acquisitions, particularly if it's a smaller developer. The fact that these small developers that have spent their time just worrying about when the next paycheck's coming in or who's going to publish the next game, don't have to worry about that. And they can focus on hopefully creating really good bloody games for us.
That's good. I think we're coming up to the end of the show there, chaps, unless you have anything else you'd like to add to the topic at all. But thank you all very much in chat for being here and for your comments. Chat's been very, very on the ball today and very active, so to speak. I think before we do leave, though, I've seen a question that Pyro M posed to Stubbs, and I thought it'd be quite fun just to read it out before we get to the end and get your guys' takes on this. I think quite an interesting one. Talking about not mentioning Sega, Pyro M's question is: What is your favourite Sega arcade cabinet game released? Pyro's torn between Afterburner and House of the Dead 2. If you had to pick out those two,
I've already answered this. The number one for me was very easy. Sega Rally 2. I absolutely adore Sega Rally 2. It's a no-brainer for me. But if you was to ask my second, it's like, oh my god, I am in a whole world of pain because there is so many fantastic. I used to love going and playing Daytona. It was all hooked up and stuff with my buds. And just playing, so many games. Just House of the Dead, and even back in the day, things like Space Harrier. Do you remember Space Harrier? Afterburner and Outrun. Oh my god, it's just, I don't know. What would you think, Scott? What's your favourite?
Can I be honest? I can't really recall too many. House of the Dead's one that really stands out. The one that I have the fondest memories of at the minute. As soon as you asked that question, Pucks, the thing that came to mind was probably Crazy Taxi. I used to love playing the Crazy Taxi arcade game because it was like it had a steering wheel and it had the pedals and things like that as well. I remember playing that in an airport, I think at some point. But I think House of the Dead is obviously the big one. I'm trying to remember the other shooting game. I don't think that was Sega though. It was kind of like a.
You talking about Time Crisis?
Time Crisis, yeah. That wouldn't be
one with a pedal,
would it? Yeah. I used to love Time Crisis as well.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
So what are the ones that have been out?
Oh, Jesus! So many. About 18. Did you never play 18 Wheeler? That was quite cool. You had a big lorry steering wheel. Oh, wow, really?
I'm trying to Google it now, see if I can.
I think there was the Jungle River Rapids thing where you were shooting the dinosaurs. You ever played that one?
Yeah, I think is that the one where you kind of sit on a platform which kind of it moves with the water and stuff. Right?
That's it. Yeah, all of that. Oh my god, there's so many. Virtua Cop.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. I guess we're going back maybe 2 decades now, aren't we? Maybe longer.
Oh yeah, long baby. Do you remember Space Harrier? Have you ever played Space Harrier?
Oh, the name rings a bell, but I can't put a
wow, really?
face to it. So
did you ever play the original Shenmue?
Yes, yeah.
It's one of the games you could actually play in Shenmue. It had the full game of Space Harrier in it. Yeah.
Was Virtua Fighter originally a arcade game?
Virtua Fighter, yeah, that was, yeah.
That's playable in Yakuza as well.
Time Crisis was Namco, followed by Point Blank. Oh man, who remembers Point Blank?
Oh yeah,
the two little weird egghead dudes.
Yeah, so Indy's he's still got a Dreamcast. Yeah, I've still got a Dreamcast on my TV actually as we speak, and he also put Virtua Cop. Yeah, it's fantastic. Pyro M, I loved Yakuza 0, but it says Yakuza 0 as Space Harrier as well. That's interesting because Shenmue's definitely did as well. Virtua Fighter. What are we up to? Virtua Fighter 5 nowadays, I think.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see if there are any others. There's House of the Dead, Outrun, Showdown, Sega Rally.
What's your take on Afterburner? Did you like because there was a couple of Afterburners. There was a stand-up cabinet and a one that you would sit in and it would actually move left, right, up and down. You sort of tilt you and stuff. That was pretty cool.
I don't think I played that one, mate.
Oh wow!
I'm just looking at some of the other ones that I'm.
You guys are young, aren't you? You guys are young. Wow.
Yeah,
Show me age
mate.
now. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, you're proper old school, I think. Yeah.
Holy shit! Yeah. Wow. Good
Cool.
question. Great question.
Yeah, no, I think we love to end the show on a Sega topic. Thank you very much, Parin. I know that was meant for Stubbs, but I kind of stole it from you. But no, thanks for thanks for mentioning that. We always love it.
I've got one question for Flat before we finish up, Pucks, if that's all right. If it was, I want you to pick between Sega and Gears of War, just so we can kill Gears of War off again for one more episode while Stubbs in the chat, mate.
Yeah,
I'm just messing.
Gears of War.
Apologies, mate. Just.
Nah, good question. No, thank you, panel, and thank you, chat, for being here. It's been I know when I first put these topics together, it's one of those another week when it felt like it was going to be a relatively light news week, but then some of these things came up, and there were slightly bigger things enough for us to get our teeth into. I was a little bit concerned we might not be able to make the 2-hour mark, but lo and behold, we've done it once again. And thank you all very much for being here and coming on the ride with us. Before I do sign off, though, just like to add that there's been some updates to our Discord server. So if you're interested in joining the Discord, you can chat with all three of us, as well as all members of the GPG community and family on there. There should be a link in the video description for that. If it's not, we'll get that sorted as soon as possible if you're interested and you're not a part of that yet. But no, there's been some updates to the server so that you can have more specific discussions regarding platform or general chats. You can introduce yourselves, all sorts of stuff to try to make it a more fun experience for all of you guys. But apart from that, always appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. There should definitely be a show next week. We have no reason so far as to why there shouldn't be. We're trying to keep up to date with our regular weekly schedule, and there shouldn't be any disruptions so far. But I'll quickly do a few outros, and I think we'll sign off. Flap, did you have a good show tonight? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, fantastic. I quite enjoy being in the middle. I quite like when you host and stuff, and just lobbing the odd grenade in and stuff and pinging questions around. But no, I had an absolute great show tonight. Shame Luke couldn't have been here because he would have certainly picked you up on the Kingdom Hearts 4 thing. But
yes,
chat,
definitely.
Wow, chat. You know, I know it's a cliche, we say chat's on fire, but my God, I enjoyed the chat so much tonight. I don't know if it's because I wasn't hosting, I actually get more time to read the comments and stuff, but thank you ever so much, everyone that's contributed to the chat and just tuned in general and listened to the show. You know, your support means the world to us. You know, we're not huge, we're not trying to climb mountains, we just do what we do, and if people like it, then we all win, really. We like the win-win situation. So thank you everyone for being here and listening to our little podcast in the corner of the UK talking about Xbox stuff.
Definitely, and thank you again, Scott, for being here once again, fellow member of the GPG crew. Did you enjoy the tonight's show?
Yeah, love the show, mate. Just want to say great job hosting. As always, Pucks, you've done an awesome job. But also just, again, I know I said it in the Discord, but great work on sort of the changes to Discord. So anybody who hasn't seen it and just want to join, Pucks did an amazing job this past week, just organizing it, making specific places to have certain conversations. So there's never been a better time to jump in there. So thanks for that, Pucks. Really good work. But love the show. Comments. Chat were awesome as always, and hopefully we'll be back next week.
Definitely, yeah. Link should be in the description for the Discord. If it's not, we'll sort that out. Would love to talk to you there. You can talk to any of us and the rest of the community. Until then, we shall see you all next week. Thank you all very much for tuning in.